police officer mocked 15-year-old Yasmin Carter for claiming her mother is a four-star general. But moments later, General Victoria Carter stormed the precinct. "Everyone lies to get out of trouble, girl, but making up that your mother is a four-star general, that's just too pathetic." Officer Harper burst out laughing in the middle of the precinct, prompting other officers to join in the chorus of mockery. 15-year-old Yasmin Carter sat on the cold chair, her fists clenched, her chin held high, while silent tears threatened to fall. She was being questioned for being in a store after closing hours, trying to explain that she had accidentally gotten locked inside while looking for a surprise gift for her mother, who was returning from a special mission overseas. "I'm telling the truth," Yasmin murmured, her voice slightly trembling. The shine of her impeccably pressed school uniform, as her mother always demanded, contrasted with the harsh atmosphere of the precinct. "My mother is General Victoria Carter. Call her." Officer Harper leaned in, his face almost touching hers. "Look, in 25 years on the force, I've never seen a black woman come close to that rank. Why don't you tell the truth and stop wasting my time?" Yasmin took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. It wasn't the first time she'd heard something like this. At school, her classmates doubted her. Teachers subtly questioned her when she mentioned her mother's career in essays. But hearing it from a police officer in a precinct while she was alone and scared was different. It felt like the whole world was conspiring to erase the existence of the person she admired most. Yasmin's cell phone had been confiscated upon arrival. Her backpack, containing the carefully chosen gift, a miniature replica of the first tank her mother commanded, sat on the table as evidence of a crime she hadn't committed, a crime that didn't even exist. "I'll give you one chance, kid," Harper said, tossing a landline phone in her direction. "Call a real person before I put you in a juvenile cell for trespassing and attempted theft." "It's in my phone," Yasmin replied, her gaze fixed on her own shoes. "Of course it is," Harper scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Then we'll wait for your general to show up." What Harper didn't know was that, at that very moment, a convoy of 3 black SUVs was pulling into the precinct's parking lot. What he didn't know was that his name was already being mentioned in a phone call between the Pentagon and the police commissioner. What he could never have predicted was that his little kingdom of arrogance was about to crumble in a matter of minutes. Yasmin looked up when she heard the sound of doors slamming shut. For the first time since arriving at the precinct, a small smile appeared at the corner of her lips. If this story has already hooked you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow the development of this confrontation that will forever change Officer Harper's view of authority, respect, and prejudice. After all, who was this woman who had just arrived? And what would the encounter be like between one of the highest-ranking military officers in the United States and a police officer who had just crossed a line he never should have? The sound of heavy boots echoed in the precinct's hallway. Firm, rhythmic steps, like a clock counting down the final seconds of Officer Harper's arrogance. 4 uniformed soldiers entered first, positioning themselves strategically around the room. Their faces maintained the military discipline that allowed no expressions, but their eyes followed Harper like predators. "What's all this nonsense?" Harper muttered, his voice losing the confidence of before. Sergeant Daniels, Harper's superior, entered the room, his face pale. "Harper, release the girl, now." It wasn't a request. "But boss, she was in a store after closing." "Shut up," Daniels cut him off, something he had never done in 15 years of working together. Then she walked in. General Victoria Carter wasn't wearing her full dress uniform, just her service uniform with 4 stars shining discreetly on her collar. Her hair was perfectly pulled back in a low bun, her posture impeccable, and her eyes seemed to pierce through walls. Behind her were 2 military aides and a man in a suit Yasmin recognized as the family lawyer. The silence that enveloped the room was so thick it could have been cut. Harper stood frozen, his brain struggling to process the scene before him. His gaze darted from the stars on her collar to Victoria Carter's resolute face, then to Yasmin, who was now smiling subtly. "I am General Victoria Carter, Commander of the U.S. Army Materiel Command," she said in a calm voice, but one laden with an authority that made everyone present instinctively straighten their posture. "I'm here to pick up my daughter, Yasmin Carter." Harper swallowed hard, his face a mix of pale and red. "General, I didn't know she'd said that, but I never thought—" "That a black woman could reach 4 stars?" Victoria added, her gaze fixed and unyielding. "Yes, Officer Harper, I heard everything through my daughter's phone. Yasmin called me when she realized she was going to be locked in the store. The connection never dropped." The lawyer stepped forward, placing a folder on the table. "We have the full recording of the incident. It includes the moment the store closed, with my client still inside, her attempt to contact the staff, and, most importantly—" He paused dramatically, opening the folder. "Your entire interaction with Officer Harper from the moment she arrived at the precinct." Yasmin watched the scene, her heart pounding. Just 30 minutes ago, she had felt small and powerless. Now she saw the man who had humiliated her shrinking as if he wanted to disappear. Sergeant Daniels had stepped away from Harper, as if his subordinate's ruined career might be contagious. Victoria approached her daughter, examining her carefully. "Are you okay?" she asked, softening her voice for the first time since entering. "I'm fine, Mom," Yasmin replied, standing up. Harper mustered one last shred of dignity. "With all due respect, General, your daughter was still in a store after closing. We followed protocol for trespassing cases." "Trespassing?" Victoria interrupted, turning slowly toward him. "My 15-year-old daughter was accidentally locked in a store while buying a gift for me. She called me, the store manager, and 911. Your response was to handcuff her, confiscate her phone, ignore her legal right to a phone call, and subject her to humiliation based on racial prejudice." The lawyer added, not to mention interrogating a minor without a guardian or lawyer present, violating at least 5 standard procedures. Harper looked around for support, but found only faces turned away. Even Sergeant Daniels was intensely studying his own shoe. "This is just the beginning of your nightmare, Harper," Victoria said, her voice low so only he could hear. "You didn't just humiliate my daughter, you've exposed this entire precinct and this city to a lawsuit that will make your career disappear faster than you can imagine." Yasmin picked up her backpack, where the gift for her mother was still safely stored, as they prepared to leave. Harper took one last desperate step. "General Carter," he called, his voice almost pleading. "We can resolve this internally. It was just a misunderstanding. We don't need to involve the press or the courts." Victoria paused at the door and turned slowly. Her gaze was the same one she used when commanding troops in war zones. "Officer Harper, do you really think this is the first time someone has doubted my rank because of my color? Or that it's the first time my daughter has faced this kind of prejudice?" The silence that followed was his answer. But what no one in that precinct could imagine was that General Victoria Carter wasn't there just as an outraged mother. There was something much bigger at play, something that would turn this seemingly isolated incident into a case that would shake the entire power structure of the city. As mother and daughter left the precinct, escorted by military personnel, Harper stood paralyzed, unaware that his worst mistake hadn't been doubting Yasmin's word. His worst mistake was not realizing who he was truly dealing with and what Victoria Carter was capable of when her family was threatened. The Twin Oaks precinct was unprepared for what would happen in the minutes that followed. General Victoria Carter, with her commanding presence and piercing gaze, had ordered all the officers present to remain in the room. The police chief, Gregory Wilson, had just rushed in, his face a mix of concern and embarrassment at finding a high-ranking U.S. Army officer in his precinct. "General Carter, I'm Chief Wilson. I'd like to express my deepest apologies for what happened to your daughter. I can assure you—" "Chief," Victoria interrupted, her calm voice carrying more authority than any shout, "your assurances are not enough. This is not an isolated incident, as you well know." Victoria gestured to one of the aides accompanying her. He opened a laptop and projected images onto the white wall of the room. Harper's face paled as he recognized himself in several cases. In every instance, black citizens were aggressively confronted, detained without clear justification, or treated with blatant disrespect. What we're seeing here, Victoria continued, now addressing everyone in the room, are 17 documented incidents involving Officer Harper over the past 3 years. Clear patterns of racial discrimination, abuse of authority, and procedural violations. The lawyer accompanying Victoria stepped forward. "Our firm represents a civil rights coalition that has been investigating this precinct for 8 months, he explained, distributing folders to Chief Wilson and other senior officials. The incident with Yasmin was just the tip of the iceberg. Harper looked to his superior for support, but Wilson avoided his gaze. "This is ridiculous. I follow procedure. Anyone here can confirm that." The pause that followed was deafening. Not a single colleague spoke in his defense. Victoria slowly approached Harper. "Your surprise at seeing me wasn't just because I'm a woman or black. It was because you knew exactly who I was before you saw me." Harper's eyes widened. "Yes," she continued, "your cousin, Captain James Harper, serves under my command. He once mentioned he had a relative in the Twin Oaks police force. When my daughter called, frantic, saying an Officer Harper was detaining and ridiculing her, I connected the dots." Sergeant Daniels, who had been silently observing, stepped forward. "General, with all due respect, maybe we're going too far. We can handle this internally." "Exactly how you handled the 7 previous complaints against Officer Harper?" Victoria retorted, pointing to another projected document. "Complaints that were systematically dismissed or ignored?" The silence in the room was absolute. Yasmin watched her mother, awestruck by her ability to command a room and raise her voice without ever shouting. "Here's what's going to happen now," Victoria said, her voice resonating in the quiet room. "I'm here not only as a mother, but as a representative of a newly formed federal task force investigating patterns of discrimination in police departments. Twin Oaks just became our pilot case study." Chief Wilson paled. "Federal, but that would require approval from the Secretary of Defense and the Attorney General," Victoria finished. "Yes, sir. Both personally approved it after reviewing the preliminary data we collected." Victoria paused to let the information sink in. "As of this moment, this precinct is under federal oversight." Harper, finally realizing the magnitude of the situation, took a desperate step forward. "All this over a girl detained for being where she shouldn't have been? It's disproportionate." "Officer Harper," Victoria said, turning to face him directly, "when you chose to doubt my daughter's word because of her color, when you ridiculed the possibility of a black woman achieving the rank I hold, when you used your authority to humiliate a defenseless teenager, you weren't just having a bad day. You were revealing a systemic pattern that I will not allow to continue." At that moment, more people began entering the precinct: journalists, lawyers, community members, and additional military personnel. What had started as an isolated incident was turning into an event that would change Twin Oaks' history forever. "Mom?" Yasmin whispered, stepping closer to Victoria. "Did you plan all this from the start?" Victoria looked at her daughter, her eyes softening for a moment. "No, sweetheart. But I learned in the military that when a strategic opportunity arises, you seize it." She lowered her voice so only Yasmin could hear. "We've been looking for a way to intervene in this precinct for months. You just gave us the perfect opening." Harper watched helplessly as cameras appeared and microphones were set up. The investigation about to begin wasn't just about him or that night. It was about decades of injustice finally coming to light. But what Harper didn't realize, as he watched his career crumble before his eyes, was that Victoria Carter wasn't there solely as a general or part of a task force. What he didn't realize was that Twin Oaks had a personal history with the Carter family, a history buried 20 years ago that was about to resurface like a ghost no one in that precinct was prepared to face. 3 weeks later, the Twin Oaks precinct was unrecognizable. Where there had once been negligence and prejudice, there was now oversight and discipline. The federal task force, led by General Victoria Carter, had uncovered a system of corruption and discrimination that extended far beyond Officer Harper. In a conference room at the Civic Center, Victoria watched as the new police chief, Lieutenant Rebecca Jordan, a black woman recently promoted following the investigations, coordinated a meeting with community leaders. The transformation was palpable, but for Victoria, this victory had far deeper and more painful roots. "I think it's time," Victoria said to Yasmin, who was flipping through an old photo album. "They need to know the whole truth." Yasmin nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. The two walked to the center of the room, and the chatter instantly ceased. Many of you have been wondering why we chose Twin Oaks for our first federal intervention, Victoria began, her voice firm but laced with contained emotion. The truth is, this city owes my family a debt that has never been acknowledged. She gestured to Yasmin, who projected a photograph onto the wall. A smiling young black man in a military uniform. This is Marcus Carter, my younger brother. Exactly 20 years ago, he was detained in this very precinct for an alleged robbery he didn't commit. Victoria paused, letting her words sink into the silent room. They found him dead in his cell the next morning. The official report said suicide. No investigation was conducted. A murmur rippled through the room. Faces paled, especially among the veteran officers. I had just graduated from the military academy. I promised my mother that one day I would return and seek justice. Every star I earned, every position I held, brought me closer to that day. Victoria looked directly at former Chief Wilson, who had been demoted after the investigations revealed his role in covering up multiple abuse cases. When my daughter called from that store, saying the name Harper, I knew the time had come. Former Officer Harper, now in civilian clothes and without a badge, was present as part of his community reintegration process, a condition of the plea deal that spared him jail time in exchange for full cooperation in the investigations. "I didn't know about your brother," Harper said, his voice broken and unrecognizable compared to the arrogance of weeks ago. "But that doesn't justify how I treated your daughter." Victoria turned to face him. "You're right, it doesn't. But your willingness to change, to confront your biases and work to repair them, that's what makes a difference now." Yasmin watched her mother with renewed admiration. For years she had only seen the strong, unyielding, disciplined general. Now she also saw the sister who had carried silent pain for 2 decades, channeling it not into vengeance, but into transformation. "Twin Oaks will not be defined by its past," Victoria continued, addressing the room. "It will be defined by what we do from now on. My brother believed systems can change when brave people refuse to accept injustice as normal. The police reform program implemented in Twin Oaks would become a national model in the years that followed. Harper, after completing extensive training in anti-racism and restorative justice, would dedicate his life to speaking at police academies about the dangers of institutionalized prejudice. Outside the Civic Center, Yasmin finally gave her mother the gift she had bought that fateful night, a miniature replica of the first tank Victoria had commanded, with an engraved plaque, "To my mother, who taught the world not to judge a book by its cover." Victoria hugged her daughter, allowing herself to cry openly for the first time in years. "Marcus would be so proud of you," she whispered. "Of both of us," Yasmin corrected. "You turned your pain into purpose, Mom, and you've taught me that true strength isn't in never falling, it's in how you rise and help others rise too." That night, as mother and daughter walked hand in hand under the stars of Twin Oaks, a city in the process of healing, one truth became clear to all who witnessed their journey. Sometimes, it takes just one person refusing to be silenced to start a wave of change that impacts entire generations. Because prejudice thrives in the comfortable silence of the privileged, but withers in the face of the determined courage of the resilient. And when someone dares to question your humanity, your truth, or your worth, the most powerful response isn't hatred or revenge. It's turning that challenge into fuel for change that even your oppressors never imagined possible. The story of Yasmin and General Victoria Carter offers a profound lesson about the power of resilience and the courage to confront injustice. It teaches us that prejudice, often rooted in ignorance or arrogance, thrives when unchallenged, but crumbles under the weight of truth and determination. Victoria's unwavering response to her daughter's humiliation wasn't just about personal vindication. It was a stand against a system that too often dismisses the marginalized. Her journey, from a grieving sister to a transformative leader, shows that pain can be channeled into purpose, turning individual struggles into catalysts for widespread change. For Yasmin, the experience underscored the importance of holding firm to one's identity and truth, even when doubted. This story reminds us that real strength lies not in silence, but in speaking out, and that one voice, backed by conviction, can dismantle decades of inequity, inspiring generations to demand respect and justice. If this story has touched your heart and made you reflect on how small acts of prejudice can conceal larger systems of injustice, leave a comment, share your experiences, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that not only entertain but inspire real change in the world around us.